What's going on YouTube? It's Father Dark. Today this video is going to be a little bit different than normal content on this channel. Usually I stick to content that's more in regards to meta loadouts, updates, bundles that are coming out, things like that. But there's been a topic that's been a main topic of discussion for probably the last 4 to 5 years since it's become known to the public. And that's skill-based matchmaking. Now, for those of you who are more casual gamers and aren't really aware of what skill-based matchmaking is, sbmm for short, it's when you load into the match, Call of Duty tries its best to try to figure out what your skill level is in regards to a lot of different things. Your movement, your score per minute, KD, all of these different factors. There's a lot of factors that they take into consideration. But ultimately what they do is they tend to try to put you in with people of a similar skill level, an overall skill level. And the reason that so many players are upset by this is because this only really affects people, and when I say affects, I mean that it only really affects people that are at a higher skill level, the highest skill level. Because what happens is that when you're a more casual player, you get put in with other people that are very casual. But if you're someone who takes the game very seriously and you're very competitive at the game, then you're going to be placed in with other people that are extremely competitive. Now, when you say it out loud, it sounds really silly, right? If you're good at the game, you get put in with other people that are good at the game. If you're an average level player, you get put in with other average level players, right? And if you perform very poorly at the game, you get put in with people that perform poorly, right? And that seems like, at face value, that's the way the thing should be. And in this video, we're just going to kind of break down a couple of different things and just, we're going to really talk about it, because it really needs to be talked about. Because a lot of content creators, they tend to kind of just capitalize on a lot of people's frustration and anger, and they just kind of say the things that people want to hear. And in life, that's not really how things work. A lot of times something might irritate you. You may not see the reason or the purpose behind it, but the more that you kind of actually look at it from an unbiased perspective, then you'll start to realize that there sometimes are good reasons for things. So let's just talk about this a little bit. We've already talked about what is skill-based matchmaking, right? Being placed in with people that are of equal skill level to you. Now let's talk about why is it there. Okay, skill-based matchmaking, according to Call of Duty, they say that they've done numerous tests. Even last year, they said there was a point in time where they lessened skill-based matchmaking, and they say that every time that they do that, any type of test that they do, it tends to lower player retention. Now, for people that don't understand what that means, it basically just means that the more that people load into a match and they get beat up on by people of a higher skill level, the less likely they are to want to continue playing said game. And at the end of the day, a game is a business. Anybody that creates a game at the end of the day is 9 times out of 10 creating that game to profit from it. Now, there are some exceptions. There are certain games where people make the game and it's a passion project. It's something that they're just doing because they genuinely want to make other people happy. Now, that is rare, and the same people that have the availability to do things like that, they're only doing it because they usually have some other source of income. There's no way that you'd be able to develop a game and utilize the resources that you would need and the time and the energy if you didn't have some means to take care of yourself or your family or whatever it is that you need to take care of in life. So now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way, let's move on to the player retention aspect, right? And back to that just for a second, like I said, with player retention, the reason why a business would want players to stay in their game, it's very straightforward. The more time that you spend in that game, the better your numbers are going to look, and the more likely that people are going to be to spend money in that game. See, now games are a lot different than they were in the past. When I was growing up, which I'm in my 30s now, I was around for the dinosaurs. Get all the jokes out of the way. Nonetheless, when I was first growing up, my first console was a Sega Genesis. And I've seen video games go from being this thing that was more of a gaming culture was much more casual. Games themselves were much more casual. The only real experience that people had when I was growing up initially with any type of multiplayer, prior to that being the standard for games, was your friends or family members and stuff like that coming over to your house and you playing the game on the same TV, split screen, stuff like that. The good old Halo days and stuff. But gaming has evolved way beyond that. Ever since 2017, when Fortnite came out, and I hate to bring up Fortnite in a Call of Duty video, but we kind of have to here. People have began to start gaming on a way more intricate level. Whereas what I mean by that is that back in the earlier days of gaming, people just kind of got on and they just played a game. And people had lots of different games that they played. There was seldom people who really took gaming like super, super serious. Not saying there wasn't, but when I was growing up, people didn't have gaming PCs. You might have had a normal PC that you played games on from time to time because those games didn't really require the same level of hardware that games do now. But for the most part, the majority of people just went out, they saw a game on a shelf, they bought it, they'd beat it, they'd move on to something else, maybe they'd replay it later on, whatever. When Call of Duty, for example, first came out, the majority of people that played Call of Duty didn't even know what their KD was. There was no meta loadouts, and if there were, the majority of people also didn't know that those were a thing. There weren't as many YouTube channels as there are now that did videos and breakdowns on how to be the best at a particular game. And even when there were, like I said, once again, we're talking about the majority here, not the minority, because there's since the dawn of the internet and YouTube and all these different things, yes, there has been channels on games and stuff. But the point that I'm making is that the average person just kind of got on and played the game. The reason why skill-based matchmaking wasn't as serious as it was now back then was because there wasn't as much of a need for it. When you would load into Call of Duty, yeah, you might come across a clan of people that have been playing together every day and had call-outs for things, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next match, you might be playing against people who had just picked up a controller and everything in between. We all remember, well, any of us that were around back then remember Christmas noobs, the people who had just gotten the game versus the people that went ahead and bought it back in October when Call of Duty's released. And they'd be jumping on first thing in the morning thinking they were about to have a fun game of COD, only to be getting slammed by people that have been playing and already had all of their loadouts leveled up and everything like that, and knew all the maps from months prior. So now with that being said, that brings me back to the point that I made a few moments ago in regards to Fortnite. With Fortnite coming out, Fortnite took the world over. People that weren't really that into gaming before, and this is something that I saw firsthand. I had a lot of friends who, they might have owned a console, but they only kind of played games every once in a blue moon. They might just get maybe the latest COD release or, NBA 2K, Madden, whatever, and they played it here and there, but they, just wasn't that big of a deal for them. When Fortnite came out, Fortnite kind of brought gaming culture to the forefront. You had a lot of celebrities, a lot of athletes, rappers, different musicians, things like that, who just became obsessed with the game. And the average everyday person became obsessed with the game. And this is why you've seen so many other popular games start to bring in battle royales and change their whole entire gaming model into being free-to-play games to make them that much more accessible to the average person. Just a fun fact really quick. Mobile gaming makes more than anything else on the planet. And a lot of people, they just kind of go, okay, yeah, whatever. But there's something really important there. The reason why mobile games are so popular is because, one, they're extremely accessible. Everybody has a phone. Even homeless people on the street have phones. And with everybody having a phone and it being so accessible, you can play mobile games even when you don't have money. And there's a lot of people who, even when they have money, are going to be more likely to try out a game when it's free, even if it has millions of dollars worth of microtransactions in it. Like I said, just because it's free, they're going to give it a shot. And then once you get into the game and you become hooked, you're 10 times more likely to want to spend money on that game. I mean, the amount of money that I've heard from games like simple games that I've never even played before, never even thought of, like Candy Crush. They make billions and billions and billions of dollars every year from microtransactions. And another fun fact, women make up most of the people that play mobile games, interesting enough. Nonetheless, like I said, Fortnite not only brought gaming to the forefront, but it did something else that was really, really important that growing up I never thought was even going to be possible in my lifetime. And that's cross-platform. Cross-platform, for those, I'm sure most people know, but just for the people that don't know, it's just simply when you're able to play with other platforms like PlayStation, Xbox, and PC players all being able to, even with Fortnite, even mobile players being able to all be lumped in together and play. And I remember there used to, when I was growing up, and you did have PC players, it was always this thing where we just assumed that anyone that played on PC and keyboard and mouse was always just naturally going to be a better player, simply because you could get more frames per second. The fact that you were using a keyboard and mouse meant that you had more range to be able to aim, and all these different things. Things like aim assist, all that kind of these conversations that are being brought up now, they're only being brought up because we're starting to see the differences between the different platforms, and it causes arguments between all of these different people and a lot of frustration. If you're a keyboard and mouse player, you get frustrated at close range engagements because you see how aim assist does a lot of the work for players. If you're a controller player, you get frustrated with keyboard and mouse players because the common argument is that you have your whole forearm to aim with. You can literally make so many micro adjustments that controller players aren't able to make. And both arguments are valid. There are benefits and negative aspects to each one. But like I said, with cross-platforming being a thing and people not being separated by their platform anymore, you're able to see all of these differences. Nonetheless, though, so now we want to get into, is skill-based matchmaking needed? Okay, this goes back to player retention. When Warzone first released during COVID and everybody was playing, we all had just kind of gotten into this thing. And this happens a lot with pretty much any game that comes out, any new game that comes out. It's happened with Fortnite, it's happened with Apex Legends, it's happened with Warzone. Every big game that everybody has access to and can play, it's always the same situation. The game releases. No one really knows the mechanics. I mean, outside of the basic, point and shoot type of mechanics, no one really knows the mechanics. And for example, when Fortnite first came out, nobody ran around and was building like crazy the first day. That's something that it took time to evolve. I still remember when Ninja and Myth, first decided that they were gonna start building in engagements. And people thought it was crazy, and they weren't doing any type of crazy building. They just simply would make a wall and some stairs, and people were mind blown by that. Like, whoa, you can actually use this building mechanic to win fights. And I saw that go from just two pieces of things being built, the wall and the stairs, to the second that anyone got shot at, they would immediately build a mall, or a small shopping center, as a retort. And I've seen the same thing happen with other games. Apex Legends, when it first came out, people weren't really used to having character abilities in FPS games. So people would use the abilities, but they didn't really fully understand how to use them. I remember people saying that Pathfinder was a useless character, and that's because no one really understood how to utilize his grapple and build momentum and all these different things that you could do with Pathfinder in the game. And it wasn't until people started to play a little bit more that they realized that every character had like kind of something that they could use to cheese in an engagement. And then the game started to evolve into what it is currently. Same thing with Warzone. When Warzone first came out, people, there wasn't these like, oh, this is the best meta to use in Warzone, yada, yada, yada. It was just people going around and having a good time and having fun. When Warzone first came out, I remember, I think I was using like the Striker or something as like my AR. I had built it as long range and was using it as a long range loadout. And then I think I had made like an M4 with like a short barrel and no stock and all this other kind of stuff and was using that as an SMG. Nowadays, I look at that and I go, yo, those were wild times, right? Like, nothing like what we see today. And it wasn't until shortly after that we started to see this increase in people doing things like slide canceling and just, making all these loadout videos, letting people know on, we had like the birth of people like they would take the loadouts and they would actually show you on a chart, well, for 10 meters, this is the best loadout to use, 30 meters, this is the best loadout to use, et cetera, et cetera. So gone were the days where people just kind of loaded in and used whatever they wanted to use. People were sitting here using math to figure out what the best loadouts for different engagements to use were, making the game that much more competitive in itself. If you were just a regular player who had no idea who J-God was and you didn't understand what metas were and all these different things, you would just be loading in with some crazy build that probably was not at all even remotely anywhere near one of the best ones, and you would get into a fair 1v1 with someone and just get destroyed by something that deleted you like twice, sometimes even 3 times faster than whatever you were using. So, like I said, fast forward to modern day, and there's multiple levels of players, but I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, I'm gonna keep it simple and kind of say that there's 3 levels of players. You have what a lot of people consider to be the lower skill players, people that have very low KDs, very low game sense. Maybe they don't even wear a good headset or a headset at all. They just don't know much about the game. They're very casual, entry-level players. Then you have your mid-range players who are average, slightly below average. Maybe they play on a console, older console. They have an all-right headset, but they're just, their gunny's not quite up there. They miss a lot of shots. They just kind of play with their friends. It's very casual, whatever. And then you have the try-hard, sweaty people that are extremely competitive. Now, I consider myself to be an extremely competitive person. I love to play rank. I'm Crimson rank. I'm not the best, but at the same time, I pride myself on the fact that I'm able to get to Crimson rank and I solo queue because, and this is getting into the point that I'm making here. All of the friends that I've had from Warzone 1 and real life friends, even prior to Warzone's existence, that I'd never had a problem playing with before, they have slowly over time all kind of either given up on COD or they literally hide from me in the game, in regards to wanting to play with me. Simply because every time we load up and they have to play in my lobbies, it becomes debilitating for them. No one loads into a match of anything. No one loads up a game of anything and wants to lose. We all load into a game and want to win. We want to be the best. We want to have these moments where we go, look at what I just did. Look at what I just pulled off. And when you load into a game and you just absolutely get ran on by someone who is just so good that it's outside of your understanding or comprehension to where it borderline seems like they're cheating if it doesn't seem like they're cheating to you, it's debilitating. It's hurtful to the ego, to pride, all these different things, whatever you want to chop it up to. Nonetheless, it's not a good feeling. So people that aren't good enough to compete at the higher level, they don't want to be placed in with people like that. One of the things that I hear the most in regards to skill-based matchmaking is, man, I just want to sit back and have fun. I just want to have fun. Well, what is fun? Fun for you is winning. They say, well, I don't want to have to sweat. And what is sweating? Sweating is when you have to really lock in and you have to really focus and pay attention to win engagements. But see, the problem with that is that if you're having fun, that means someone else is not having fun. If you get to just run around a lobby and delete everybody that you come across and finesse them, slide around them all day long, do finishing moves on them, teabagging, all that good stuff that we as COD players love to do, someone else is having a bad time. And what happens when that person has a really bad time? Rage quitting. Now, if you try to deny that rage quitting is a thing, all you have to do is scroll through my profile. I have numerous videos where I've deleted the same person multiple times, done finishing moves on them, whatever, and a lot of times they end up leaving before you can even get to them again or complete the finishing move or whatever. And when that person leaves, some people leave and they just, they go to another lobby. Some people, they leave and they log off and they get off the game and they say, I'm going to go play something else. I hear it in proximity chat all the time. Somebody getting destroyed. It doesn't even have to be by me. Sometimes it's just they're getting destroyed by somebody else in the lobby. and they say, man, I can't take this. I'm getting off the game. I'm going to play something else. I'm going outside. And that is not what Call of Duty wants. They want you to be happy when you play their game. When they give you those surveys and it says, how was your experience? And you put, my experience was really poor, I really dislike this game, then they're going to try to do things and alter things in their algorithm, matchmaking, all that kind of stuff, to make your experience more enjoyable. And as a company, as a business, that's what they should be doing. When you go to McDonald's and you order your food and the person is extremely rude to you, and they have a survey on their receipt that says, tell us how good of a job we did. Well, when you say that they did do a very good job, McDonald's looks at that as, well, you might not come back here and buy more food from us. So what are we going to do? We're going to change things. And more than likely, we're going to try to fire and get people out of here who we feel like are part of the problem. And this is what happens in video games. When the video game looks at you, the algorithm looks at you, Activision, whatever, and they say, well, Timothy over here, he just played 4 matches and he got absolutely ran on. And after those 4 matches, he got off the game and went and loaded up Fortnite, which is our competitor. Or he went and loaded up Roblox, Minecraft, whatever. That's not what they want. They want you to want to load up every day and play nothing but Call of Duty. So what do? Instead of putting little Timmy in lobbies with people like me or people that are better than me, they say, you know what? Let's put him in with other people of his similar skill level. Now, I've seen this firsthand. I have children. I have 2 little boys. And they've played all of the shooters, Fortnite, Apex, Call of Duty. Call of Duty is one of the ones that I've seen them get the most discouraged in whenever they've tried to play with me or other family members or anything like that. And that's because people can sense their weakness immediately. They sense that they're newer players, they're younger, and they will run past a player like me to try to get to them, and will, do all types of stuff in the game, finishing moves, all types of stuff that is discouraging to a new player. And when you go into games like Fortnite, their skill-based matchmaking is on another level. Not only will they put you in with players that are of lower skill level, they'll fill the majority of the lobby up with actual AI and bots that barely even shoot back, because that will be more welcoming to new players and lower skill players than a game where before you can even comprehend what's happened, you're sitting back in the lobby again. It's not a fun game when you can't actually play the game because the difficulty level is so high that you never even actually get to experience the game. Same thing with other friends, like I was saying before, friends that I had back in Warzone 1, back when the game was a lot more simple and before all these meta loadouts and all these different things. I had friends that would jump on and play every single day. And the more skilled that I became at the game and the harder my lobbies became, the less I found that they wanted to play with me. Now, they have no problem playing with each other, all of the lower skill friends teaming up together, and they'll call me, they'll send me clips and say, look at this, look, I just had a game where I won and got 9 eliminations. And they'll say, yeah, I must be getting better now. Let's play together. And that's where the problem with skill-based matchmaking comes in, because people start to get this false sense of security that when they're loading in and they're going against people of their own skill level, which is a lower skill level, and they're winning, they're getting eliminations, they start to think, well, maybe I was just having a bad day the other day when me and Dark played. And they load in with me, and as soon as my lobbies start to hit, they can no longer do anything. They can't peek a window, they can't go around a corner, they can't open up a box and pick up anything, because people will immediately go and get their loadouts off rip within the first 15-20 seconds of the game, open in a few boxes, and they just buy it from a buy station, and then they immediately start popping a UAV and pushing everybody. That's pretty much how I play the game. Very fast paced, very aggressive, zero hesitation, all of that kind of stuff. And they immediately, after, I have one friend, it's really funny, he gets a headache every time we play together. It's really, really wild. He never gets headaches when he plays with anybody else, but magically whenever he plays with me, all of a sudden his head starts hurting, right? And we all know what that is. It's just that he is trying to find some reason, without saying that he's not enjoying the game when he plays with me, to say like, oh, I got to get off or something, right? It's always the same thing. It's after about 2 or 3 games all of a sudden, and he's the one that will call me and be very excited about playing. But like I said, skill-based matchmaking is so punishing for him that he just can't take it. Now the thing is this was the original point. People that have a problem with skill-based matchmaking, they don't seem to understand that. Yes, they'll say things like, "Oh, well, I'm punished for being good at the game." You're not being punished. It's just what's fair. If we think about skill-based matchmaking on any other aspect of life, right? Let's take sports for example. Now, I'm not the biggest sports guy. I don't sit around and watch sports. I don't mind playing them, but I don't. It's not my thing to just sit around and watch sports. I'd rather watch COD champs or something before I'll sit down and watch like a basketball or football game. But I understand the basic premise of how sports work. Let's take Mike Tyson, for example, right? Let's say Mike Tyson had a big fight coming up, and we go, well, who's he going up against? And people said, oh, well, he said he doesn't want to have to sweat that hard, so he's going up against a middle schooler or a baby. The first thought we'd have is, well, how's that fair? That's not cool. He's Mike Tyson. Now, let's take it up a notch. Let's say that Mike Tyson was going up against somebody in a fight, and this was a boxer who had just as much knowledge of how to box as he does. But they were half his weight class. I don't know what he weighs, but let's say he weighs somewhere around, in his prime, he weighed somewhere around 220, 240 pounds or something like that. I don't know what he weighed, but let's just say it was a lot. And then let's say you had someone who had same amount of skill and knowledge, but they only weighed 120 pounds. We'd still not think that's fair, right? And I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, well, that's a competition. I don't care if it was a competition or if it was just a normal, friendly boxing match in the ring. We would still look at that and say, why not make him go up against someone his own size? And that, in a nutshell, is what skill-based matchmaking is. So when you find yourself in these hard lobbies and stuff like that, you should think about it as more of a compliment versus, oh, you're being punished. You don't need to be in lower skill lobbies because you're not a lower skilled player. There's a word for that. It's called bullying. When we sit back and we go against people in life that are nowhere near our skill level, we are essentially doing that to people, and that's just not fair. So the other argument that I hear a lot in regards to this is, well, there shouldn't be skill-based matchmaking in pub matches because it's basically like I'm playing ranked without playing ranked. And the thing about that is that there's a very clear difference between ranked. In all honesty, there's a very clear difference between ranked and when it's not ranked. You know, when you play at the higher levels, like once you get up past Diamond and Diamond in Call of Duty ranked, you do see a massive difference. In pub matches, there is very seldom 7-8 teams left in the final circle of a match. There's usually like one or 2 or 3 left. You have all types of mixes. You have teams that actually run together. You have people like me who run solo squads and things like that. And the problem with skill-based matchmaking is that there's so many content creators out here who create this false idea of what gaming should be. Because secretly behind the scenes, they're either using VPNs or they're double boxing, which for people who don't know what double boxing is, it's basically just where you take, like, for example, I play on PC, but I also have Xboxes and stuff around the house. Let's say I took one of those Xboxes and I made a brand new account and I just let it get a really bad KD for a few games. If I let that account post in a lobby with me, like I load into the lobby with it, skill-based matchmaking is going to try to put us in games that are very easy to protect that new account so that they don't get discouraged and want to quit. And when that happens, you'll see a lot of these content creators loading into matches of COD, and for some strange reason, no one in the lobby shoots back. People have no idea how to move. There's no slide canceling. They're using very bad loadouts. Everybody's talking freely on proximity chat about their new 75-inch TV that they're playing on, all this kind of stuff. Whereas we know as high-skilled players that is not what we deal with in regular lobbies. And what happens is that, and like I said, the problem with that is that it creates this false perception of what a match is going to be like. You have all these people that load into a match and they think that they're just going to go in there and they're going to drop 20s and 30s and even 40s. And I don't want to name any content creators, but we all know content creators that do this. We all know that there's some content creators out there that they sit back and they act like, oh, I'm just so good at the game. And we look at their lobbies and go, bro, literally no one in that lobby was even shooting back at you, man. What are you talking about? Like, things are completely different. It's one of the most common things I hear. People say, oh, well, in my lobbies, they do this, they do that. But when you're good enough, you recognize that there's some, you know, they're doing a little bit of fiddling with the matchmaking and doing these things to kind of get around it. And you have some content creators. I'll give an example. A lot of people know Jay Lucci. It might be Jay Cucci. I don't know. I think it's Jay Lucci. Anyway, nonetheless, I actually saw him on a TikTok live one time, and he had no shame in his game. And I actually respect this because he wasn't lying to people. Not only was this man double boxing, meaning that he had one new account in the lobby with him that he was hosting with, he actually had 3 altogether. So he had a full squad, you know, with him included, but the other 3 people in the squad were Smurf accounts. So when he's just running around, just having a good time. He's running around solo. Nobody's really shooting back. The people are scared. You have whole entire teams that are stacked up, and they're still somehow missing all their shots on him. And he's dropping 30s, 40s, sometimes even 50s consistently. And he has no shame. He's showing people and telling them, like, listen, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this because I'm tired of having to sweat like ridiculously crazy in every single game. And that I'm fine with. The problem that I have is when people lie and manipulate to their audience and make them think that they're supposed to just load into a match and no one is ever supposed to shoot back to them. Because a lot of people are really susceptible to that. So they load into a match and they're placed in there with people like me who have very good game sense. They have a good headset. They're also playing on a PC. They know what all the meta weapons are. They're a similar rank to them. All of these different things, and we're not going to just allow you to manhandle us the way that you might manhandle people that aren't as good at the game. And if content creators were more honest with people, I feel like it would make the conversation around skill-based matchmaking so much less stigmatized, I'd say. Because like I said, when people see these types of gameplays, they expect that's what they're supposed to do. They use them as motivation to learn from them. And when they load into a match and everyone actually shoots back, it's very confusing to them. And they're like, well, what is it? Is it me? You know, what's going on? Does the game just not like me? What's going on here? No. I'll give you a really good example. Every now and again, I have matches where maybe I play early in the morning, or, you know, it's just one of those days where maybe like there's just not a lot of people on. There's a lot more casual players than there are competitive players. And you can see it from different gameplays that I have where I get double digits, you know, maybe 18, 20 eliminations. And I go, wow, that's a really good game. Sometimes it's just the momentum that I'm having in the game. Maybe it's because I'm using a build that's meta and people haven't quite caught on to it yet. It's in the first 48 hours of it before everyone knows about it, et cetera, right? So you have games like that, but most of the time in a normal lobby, I should only be getting anywhere from like 9 to 13, maybe even 14 eliminations at the most, simply because I'm being put in lobbies with people that actually know what they're doing and are similar skilled. If I'm a Crimson level player, I should be getting put in with other Diamond and Crimson level players. So it's kind of like when you see a content creator, and I know a lot of people that are watching this have probably seen this before. You have these content creators that they go, you know, every single day they jump on and they miraculously can run around and consistently drop 20s in a game. But then they go to a LAN tournament, you know, Call of Duty next event or whatever, and they can't get any more than 5 or 6 eliminations. That is natural skill-based matchmaking. There is no algorithm to matchmake people at those events. It's just simply that everyone there is equally skilled at the game. And when I say equally, I mean that their skill level only differentiates and varies microscopically, right? In comparison to other lobbies and stuff like that. So they're not going to be able to just run around and finesse the people in those lobbies the same way that they do when they're at home and they are able to alter matchmaking, or they're just being put in with Joe Blow that works at 9 to 5 and is playing on his, like I said, 65, 75-inch TV from across the living room after a couple brewskis, you know? That's ultimately, just to kind of wrap things up here, why skill-based matchmaking is needed overall. It is beneficial to the community, to the long-term standing of a game, because when you don't have it, the casual player base will leave. And without that casual player base, which makes up like 95, 96% of the people that load in and play a game, the game will ultimately die. We've seen it with so many other games. And that's going to bring me to the next point, is what happens when there is no skill-based matchmaking. And for anybody that's still here, I appreciate you sticking around because this has been a long video. But there's a lot of things that just need to be said and need to be talked about. Nonetheless, what happens when you don't have skill-based matchmaking in a game? Now, let's take one of the prime examples here. I'm sure there's a lot of different examples, but I'm just going to use the one that's most recent, XDefiant. A lot of people that had a problem with skill-based matchmaking in COD for years now have been talking about XDefiant. XDefiant was supposed to be the Call of Duty eliminator. You know, it was supposed to get rid of Call of Duty. It was basically made by the same people that made the original Call of Duties. And the one major thing that everyone was excited about, that was talked about, was that there would be no skill-based matchmaking. If you weren't good at the game, you would just be not good at the game, and you'd have to deal with it and be placed into lobbies with people that were good, that were medium, and that weren't bad. And like I said, the only people, or that were bad, and the only people that genuinely cared about this at all were the good players. So you know who flocked to this game? The good players. And you know what the main complaint was immediately after its release? The lobbies were too sweaty. Who would have thought that when you make a game that is catered to people that are sweaty and want to go around and basically beat up on people that are less skilled than them, that they would get frustrated that there weren't too many people that were less skilled than them to beat up on? It was self-inflicted skill-based matchmaking. And if you look at XDefiant now and the numbers are, it's embarrassing how low they are. No one talks about it anymore. I haven't heard anything about it whatsoever, and I'm pretty sure it's on its way to being a game that just is not played anymore by anyone else. People have flocked back to, what do you know, Call of Duty. So that's just a small lesson in why it's needed. Because you have to have a community for a game to exist. And if people aren't happy with the game, then they'll stop playing it. If they're constantly getting beat up on, they will migrate to other games, especially in a day and age where other games are more welcoming to people, like the example that I gave earlier with Fortnite, giving people bots and putting them in with people that are less skilled, or same skill level as them, to help them become more acclimated to the game. Now, next thing we need to talk about is, will COD ever take it away or lessen it and change it? And it's a very short answer. They've already stated that they've done numerous tests, and I'm pretty sure that I was playing when they did their test for it, because there was a period of time earlier in the year where I was playing COD and it just kind of felt like the lobbies got easier for a little while, to a point where I almost kind of felt bad and was like, well, what's going on here? I'm being put in with people that have no idea what they're doing and are lost. I was starting to see more Snoop Dogg skins, so to speak, on the regular, versus Crimson and iridescent rank skins and stuff like that in the lobbies. And for a good player, yeah, it's all fun and games to go around and beat up on lesser skilled players. But for those people that are getting dumpstered on, it's not a fun experience. And what do you think they do? They go, man, COD it's too hard, it's too sweaty. I'm gonna go play something else now. And that's exactly what they do. They go and play something else. So ultimately, Activision is not ever gonna remove skill-based matchmaking. It's here. It's a part of life, and we have to accept it. It's no different than the sky being blue and you being upset that it's blue and going, well, why can't it be burgundy? Because it's not. It's blue. It's just what it is. You either accept it or you don't. But complaining about it all day long on the internet, running to Twitter and saying, SBMM, oh my God, it's the worst. What's COD doing? Blah, blah, blah. If you guys truly cared that much, you wouldn't play it anymore. And if you're watching this video, it's because you care. Even if you're not playing the game, you're still hoping and praying that they'll change things and do things your way, which means you care. But you have to accept that it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. It's something that they realize for the greater majority of the community, it works. And people say, well, they don't care about their sweaty, player base. In all honesty, from a business perspective, why should they? We make up a very small, minute part of the community. The average player, which is well over 90%, is not trying to do all that. They're just trying to play the game and have fun. And they don't want to have to worry about YYN, sweaty movement kids, all types of stuff. When I say kids, it's not just kids. I'm in my 30s and I still do all of this stuff. To an extent, man. I don't do it all the time for every little thing, but I'm constantly slide canceling around. I know what all the best metas are. I learn whatever the best tips and tricks are, whatever. I mean, I even try to show a lot of those things and help people with a lot of those things. So I'm no exception to any of that. But at the same time, I'm fully aware and I'm not naive to the fact that the average person that plays, just like the majority of 9 out of 10 of my friends, they're just average people. And they just want to get on and have fun and not have to sweat constantly just to be able to succeed in the game. So we're going to close this video out with ways to get around it. Simply because now that I've spent well over 30 minutes talking to you about skill-based matchmaking and why it exists, pros and cons, all those kind of things. I will leave you with this. Ways around skill-based matchmaking. One of the first things that I want to say is those same friends that I have that don't like to play with me as much because the lobbies are too sweaty. A lot of times what I do is I let them host the lobbies. When they host the lobbies versus me hosting the lobbies are a little bit harder for them, but they're much easier for me. So if you do have friends that are terrible at the game, when I say terrible, I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean, not as good as the top 1% of players and stuff like that. Let them host the lobbies and play with them. You will get much easier lobbies. And I mean worlds different than anything that you're probably normally playing with. So let's say you say, well, I don't have any friends to play with that have lower KDs, whatever, right? Whatever you might say to that. The other option for you is double boxing. Like I said, double boxing is simply making another account. If you have another console around the house, a PC, whatever that's capable of running the game, make a Smurf account, allow it to just get a very low KD over a day's period of time or whatever, and load up that account and play with it. If that's really what you want to do. Now, I don't encourage that simply because I feel like you should pride yourself in wanting to constantly get better. No matter how good you think you are, you can get better. There's always going to be somebody you're going to run across who's going to just dumpster all over you. It happens to everybody. It happens to me every single day. As much as I dumpster on other people, I come across people that I have to go, whoa, is that guy cheating or is he just really good? And I have to be honest about it and admit it. But I do understand sometimes people just want to have fun. They just want to kind of run around and they want to be the one that's doing the dumpstering and all of that. So, like I said, there are other options. And obviously you have VPNs. Now VPNs, I have never used a VPN, so I can't speak to if they actually work or if that's more like myth that they work. But they may work. And if they do, and that's something that you decide that you want to do, more power to you, man. But like I said, though, the whole point of this video is that I'm really tired of hearing the community complain about skill-based matchmaking so much. There comes a point in time where you have to ask yourself, is anything going to come from this? And if you've been complaining about something for half a decade now and nothing has changed, it's probably not going to. And it's okay to admit that nothing is probably going to change about this particular thing, and to just kind of learn to accept it. And once you've accepted it, then you can kind of say, well, what are my options to kind of get around it, or whatever the case may be. So I just wanted to go ahead and wrap it up and say that skill-based matchmaking is definitely here to stay. Now you understand it a little bit more, and if you have anything if you have any problems with it still, you at least now have some options and ways around it. But that's going to be all for this video. Any questions or concerns, anything like that you guys have, just go ahead and leave them in the comment sections, and I do appreciate you guys.
I mean, I kind of fuck with the sniper, but